The afternoon sun burned fiercely over Maitama, Abuja. The city shimmered, a place of marble walls, tinted SUVs, and quiet wealth. Inside the pavilion, one of the capital's most luxurious restaurants, the clink of silver cutlery and murmured laughter filled the air. At a corner table sat David Ocone, 32, heir to the Ocone real estate empire. His wristwatch alone could feed a village. Across from him were his friends, Emeka, Jide, and Femi, Abuja's elite sons, loud, charming, and unbothered. They were halfway through a conversation about politics when Emeka's laughter boomed. "Did you see that viral video? Some guy pretending to help beggars, but NA fake." The group laughed. David forced a smile. But something caught his eye outside the glass wall. By the trash bins behind the restaurant stood a woman. Her wrapper was faded, her scarf slipping off her head. She held a toddler in one arm, a boy of maybe 2 years. Her face wasn't the typical hardened one of beggars. There was gentleness, pain, and quiet dignity. She wasn't shouting or chasing cars. She was waiting, patiently, by the corner where the restaurant's leftover food was dumped. David froze. He watched her as the waiter walked out, emptied half-eaten plates into bin, and returned inside. The woman hesitated for several seconds, her child whimpering weakly. Then she knelt by the bin and gently picked the cleanest portions of rice and chicken, whispering to her son, "Eat small, my love. God is watching." Something inside David's chest twisted sharply. His friend Jide noticed. "Guy, what are you staring at?" David nodded toward the window. "Oh, that woman." Emeka scoffed. "Forget that one, Jay. They are everywhere. Pity won't change Abuja." But David couldn't look away. There was something haunting about her composure, suffering with pride. He signaled a waiter. "Pack that plate of rice. Add water. Make it quick." Minutes later, he stepped out into the scorching sun, the scent of exhaust fumes and dust filling his nose. The woman noticed him approach and immediately turned defensive, clutching her son close. "Please, madam," he said softly, "take this. It's fresh." She hesitated, searching his face. He wasn't mocking her. With trembling hands, she accepted the pack. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice breaking. "God bless you." "What's your name?" David asked. "Amora," she said quietly. "And this is my son, Chidi." David nodded slowly. "You'll be fine, Amora. Things will change." Her eyes watered. "Amen, sir. Amen." As he turned back toward the restaurant, he saw her open the food carefully and feed Chidi piece by piece. Her expression was love and heartbreak woven together. That night, as David lay in his sprawling Asakoro mansion, he couldn't sleep. The image of Amora's hollow eyes kept replaying. For the first time in years, his wealth felt meaningless. He had grown up believing success was about power, but now it just felt empty. The Ocone mansion gleamed like a white castle on Namdi Azakai Way. 20 rooms, 6 staff, a marble pool, and silence, the kind of silence that money can't fill. David woke to the aroma of imported coffee and the faint hum of morning traffic. He had everything, yet his mind was restless. He couldn't stop thinking of Amora's voice, her son's frail little hands. He went about his day, driving his matte black Range Rover to the Ocone Group headquarters in Views 2. In the glass-wall boardroom, executives debated expansion plans, figures flashing on digital screens. David nodded absently as they talked about billions in profit. "So, should we approve the new estate plan in Guarimpa?" "Yes, fine," David murmured, barely hearing them. His assistant noticed. "You okay, sir?" "Yeah." He lied. When the meeting ended, he drove aimlessly through the city, eventually finding himself back near the pavilion. His eyes instinctively searched the dumpsters. The spot was empty. No Amora. He felt disappointment and confusion. Why did he care? That evening, he dressed for a charity gala at the Transcorp Hilton, hosted by his cousin Lillian, a socialite and influencer. The theme was empowering women. As cameras flashed, Lillian hugged him tightly. "David, darling, smile for the press." He forced one. She didn't notice his exhaustion. During the speeches, David's gaze wandered. The words empowerment and hope echoed meaninglessly until one speaker, a pastor, said something that hit him. Sometimes the person God sends for your breakthrough doesn't wear suit. They come in rags to test your heart. David froze. His chest tightened. Amora's image returned vividly. The way she whispered, "God bless you," it wasn't a cliché. It was real gratitude. When the MC announced a donation drive, Lillian nudged him. "David, your turn to show generosity." He stood, took the MIC, and said quietly, 5 million naira to women rebuilding hope. The crowd gasped and clapped, but David didn't smile. He wasn't donating for applause. He was trying to fill an ache he couldn't name. That night, he stood by his balcony, Abuja glittering beneath the moonlight. He whispered to the wind, "If I ever see her again, I'll do more than just feed her." He didn't know Destiny had already heard. Days turned into weeks. David returned to his normal routine, but Amora's memory followed him like a shadow. Meanwhile, in a rundown neighborhood in Nyanya, Amora sat outside a wooden shed clutching her sick child. Life had reduced her to fragments. Her husband had died 2 years earlier in a construction accident. She'd been evicted, betrayed by relatives, and forgotten by friends. She fed Chidi with water mixed with gari. His belly was swollen, his eyes dull, tears streamed down her face. "God, even if you don't send an angel, send me a chance." That morning, as she walked past a church gate, she noticed a paper pinned on the notice board. Domestic assistant wanted, Asakoro residence. Experience preferred. Accommodation provided. Her heart thudded. Asakoro, the same area where she once begged. She quickly copied the number and borrowed a phone to call. A woman's voice answered. "Come by 10 a.m. for an interview." By 9:45, Amora stood before a tall black gate surrounded by trimmed hedges. She clutched Chidi tightly, intimidated by the security guards there. "Who you Dave find?" he barked. "I came for the domestic work interview, sir." He grumbled but let her in after checking. The mansion was massive, marble floors, fountains, silence. The housekeeper, Mama Ruth, led her inside. "Wait here. Ogade come." Moments later, footsteps approached. Amora turned and froze. It was him. David stopped mid-step. "Amora." Her mouth opened. You live here?" For a long second, neither spoke. The air felt thick with disbelief. "I didn't expect to see you again," he said softly. She lowered her head. "I'm sorry, sir. I just came for the job. I didn't know this was your house." He studied her, thinner, exhausted, yet dignified. "You're hired," he said quietly. She blinked. "But you haven't even." "I said you're hired. Welcome to my home." As she followed the housekeeper to the staff quarters, tears silently rolled down her cheeks. She looked up at the sky. "God, so you still remember me." Amora settled into her new job cautiously. The mansion felt surreal. Polished tiles, soft lights, cold air conditioning. Each time she scrubbed the floor or served food, she couldn't believe she lived here. David tried to act indifferent, but he found himself watching her quietly. She worked with grace, patient, diligent, respectful. She never complained, never slacked. One afternoon, he passed by the garden and saw her teaching Chidi how to read from an old storybook. The boy giggled, his voice echoing through the air. "Sounded out, 'My love, A for apple,'" she said. David smiled from afar. That laughter brought life into a house that had forgotten joy. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, they began to talk about life, food, faith, and family. She told him how she once dreamed of owning a small catering business before life fell apart. One evening, she cooked Ayuzi soup differently, light, aromatic, perfectly balanced. When David tasted it, he blinked. "This tastes like my mother's," he said softly. She smiled shyly. "My late mother used to cook it that way, too." A strange warmth filled the room. But as peace blossomed, whispers began among the staff. "Olga likes that woman too much," they murmured. David ignored them, but he noticed Amora's unease. She tried to avoid him more often, afraid of gossip. Yet Every time their paths crossed, the connection deepened silently. One morning, Lillian arrived unannounced, her designer heels clicking against marble. "David, I came to drop your invite for the governor's ball," she said sweetly. But her smile froze when she saw Amora serving breakfast. "Who's that?" she asked sharply. "My new staff," David replied calmly. Lillian's eyes narrowed. "She's quite comfortable for a maid." Later, in the kitchen, she cornered Amora. "Be careful. Men like my cousin help people for sport. Don't mistake pity for affection." Amora bowed politely. "I just do my work, Ma." That evening, David found Amora crying by the garden. "What happened?" he asked gently. "People are talking," she whispered. "They think I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I should leave." David's voice hardened. "Don't you dare say that. You've done nothing wrong." He looked into her eyes, raw, sincere. "You belong here. Amora, don't let anyone shame you for surviving." For a long moment, neither spoke. Their silence said what words couldn't. From the balcony above, Lillian watched with clenched fists. "This woman will ruin everything," she muttered. She didn't know fate was already preparing its next storm. Saturday mornings in Asakura were slow. The gardener's hose hissed softly against rose bushes, and sunlight filtered through white curtains into David Ocon's living room. He sat on the couch with his laptop, reviewing proposals, but his mind was scattered. Ever since he defended Amora from gossip, the house had felt warmer, alive again. Downstairs, Amora hummed quietly while dusting the shelves near the grand piano. Her movements were graceful, almost reverent. She paused to straighten a picture frame, a family photograph of a younger David standing beside his late parents. Beside them was another woman, elegant and smiling. Amora's hand froze midair. She knew that face. Her breath caught. It can't be. It was Madame Teresa, her late mother's elder sister, the only relative who had ever cared for her before leaving for the UK 15 years ago. Tears pooled in her eyes. The woman who once promised, "If life ever gets too hard, find the Ocons," was here, smiling beside them. When David noticed her standing still, he walked closer. "You okay?" he asked. Amora turned, startled. "Sir, this woman." She pointed at the frame. "How did you know her?" David looked up. "That's my godmother, Madame Teresa Oniima. She worked with my mom on charity projects before she moved abroad." Amora staggered back slightly. "Oniima, that's my mother's maiden name. She was my aunt." David's jaw tightened. "Wait, you're related to her." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She raised me after my mother died. But she left Nigeria years ago, and I never heard from her again." The revelation struck them both silent. Two live from opposite worlds suddenly linked by blood and history. Later that night, David couldn't shake the coincidence. He called a family lawyer to check the old estate files. At midnight, the lawyer arrived carrying a weathered brown envelope labeled for Amora Oniima, to be given if found. David's pulse quickened. Fate was clearly orchestrating something larger. He waited until morning to hand it to her. The following morning, Amora stood trembling in the study as David placed a brown envelope on the desk. "This was left by Madame Teresa for you," he said softly. Her fingers shook as she unsealed it. Inside were old photographs, a letter, and stamped documents. She unfolded the letter, yellowed with time, and began to read aloud, her voice breaking. "My dearest Amora, if life ever turns cruel and you find yourself lost, go to the Ocons. They are friends, not strangers. I owe your mother a debt I can never repay. You are stronger than any storm, child. Do not let the world convince you that you are less. Aunt Teresa." By the time she finished, her tears fell freely. David sat beside her, stunned. "Your mother helped my father when his company was collapsing," he said after a long silence. She offered her savings to cover payroll until his loan came through. He never forgot that act of kindness. Amora covered her mouth. "So our families were connected, and we never knew." David smiled faintly. Maybe God wanted it this way, for our paths to cross again. But that tender moment didn't go unseen. "Lillian, who had stopped by unannounced to check on things, overheard everything from a hallway. Envy burned in her chest. She watched David soft gaze on Amora and clench her fists. "No," she muttered under her breath. "This woman is not taking my cousin's attention. Not in this lifetime." Before the week ended, Lillian began to plan, and what started as jealousy soon turned into malice. Lillian returned 2 days later, all smiles and fake warmth. "David, you never return my calls. I brought suya from Kaduna, your favorite." David chuckled politely. "Leave it in the fridge. I have a meeting soon." When he left for the office, she wandered around the mansion like she owned it. Her designer heels clicked across the marble as she made her way to the kitchen, where Amora was rinsing plates. "So," Lillian began, her tone sugary, "you and my cousin seem close." Amora turned carefully. "It's been kind, Ma. I'm just grateful." Lillian's smile sharpened. Grateful people know when to stay in their place. Don't mistake kindness for interest, dear. David likes helping strays, but once they start thinking they're family, he gets bored. Amora's throat tightened. "I don't." "Save it," Lillian snapped. "Just keep things professional." That evening, while David was in a video call, Lillian sneaked into his room, pocketed a luxury watch, and slipped it beneath Amora's pillow in the staff quarters. The next morning she feigned alarm. "David, your Patek Philippe. I can't find it anywhere." Security searched the mansion. When the watch turned up in Amora's room, whispers filled the air. The guards exchanged awkward glances. "I didn't take it," Amora stammered, panic rising. "I would never." Lillian folded her arms smugly. "Please, spare us the drama." Just then, David walked in. His eyes darted between Amora's tears and Lillian's fake pity. "Enough," he barked. "No one touches her." He turned to Lillian. "You planted it." Her face flushed. "Excuse me." "I've seen this game before," he said coldly. "You can leave." "David, I'm family." "Exactly. That's the only reason I'm not calling security." Lillian stormed out, humiliated. Amora collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. David knelt beside her. "Don't cry," he said quietly. "No lie can destroy what truth protects." From that day, she trusted him completely. Weeks later, the rainy season began. Thunder rolled through Abuja's skies, and heavy clouds blanketed the mansion. One night, Amora rushed into the corridor clutching Chidi, his small body burning with fever. "Please, help me," she cried. David ran out in his pajamas. "What happened?" "He's not breathing properly." He grabbed his car keys without hesitation. "We're going to Nizami Hospital, now." The drive was frantic. Rain battered the windshield as Amora wept quietly in the passenger seat, whispering prayers. In the back seat, Chidi whimpered softly, his chest rising and falling unevenly. Inside the emergency ward, doctors worked quickly. After 2 hours, one approached them. "It's pneumonia, but we caught it early. He'll be fine." Amora broke down, clinging to David. Thank you, sir." "Don't call me sir," he murmured. "It's David." For 3 days, he stayed at the hospital, paying every bill, bringing food, and even sleeping on the couch beside them. On the 3rd night, he woke to find Amora praying beside Chidi's bed, hands lifted, whispering, "Lord, bless the man who became our miracle." Something cracked open in his heart. Watching her, he realized he wasn't just helping her out of pity anymore. He was drawn to her strength, her faith even when life gave her none. When Chidi finally smiled again, David felt as if the entire mansion had breathed new life. He bought the boy toys, hired a tutor, and promised Amora that her son would never lack again. But their closeness would soon invite another storm, one bigger than jealousy or sickness. It started with a single photograph. A journalist at the hospital had spotted David carrying a sleeping child in his arms while Amora walked beside him. The image hit social media by dawn. Billionaire and his beautiful maid, love or charity. By noon, it was everywhere. Blogs twisted the story, influencers speculated, and gossip shows called her the woman who bewitched the Okone. David's phone buzzed nonstop. His PR manager urged him to issue a denial. Sir, say she's just staff. The board is panicking. He looked out the window. She's more than staff. The manager blinked. Sir, this could cost you investors. Then they were never real partners, David replied. Meanwhile, Amora sat in her quarters reading the hateful comments. Gold digger, pretender, seductress. She shut the phone and cried quietly. Before sunrise, she packed her clothes, lifted Chidi, and whispered, We have to go. When she opened the gate, a voice stopped her, leaving without saying goodbye. David stood there, tired but calm. You really thought I'd let lies chase you out again? Her lips trembled. They'll ruin you, so. He stepped closer. Let them. The truth will protect us, like it always has. Her tears fell freely. Why do you care this much? He smiled faintly. Because you remind me what humanity looks like. He took her bag gently. You're not going anywhere, Amora. Not this time. As dawn broke over Abuja, photographers waited outside the mansion gates, hungry for a new headline. Inside, David and Amora stood side by side, two souls fated torn apart and sewn together again, unaware that the biggest revelation of their lives was yet to come. The Abuja sun blazed bright that afternoon, its golden light streaming through the tall glass windows of the Okon mansion. David sat with Chidi on the terrace, helping the little boy assemble toy cars. Laughter filled the air, a sound the house hadn't heard in years. Then the security guard walked briskly to the door. Sir, someone's here asking for Madame Amora. Amora frowned. For me? Before she could ask further, the heavy gate swung open, and a convoy of black SUVs rolled in. From the front car stepped Chief Anayo, a man in his late 50s, thick-necked, dressed in agbada embroidered with gold. His face was familiar, one Amora hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. Her knees weakened. Papa, she whispered. Chief Anayo's expression was stone cold. So this is where you ended up? A maid in another man's house. David stood immediately. Excuse me, sir. Stay out of this. Chief Anayo snapped, his voice echoing through the courtyard. This is family business. Amora trembled. Why are you here? You left us when Mama was dying. You never even buried her. The man adjusted his cap. I came because your name has been all over social media, disgracing me. How dare you let the world think my daughter is some charity case? David's jaw tightened. What's your tone, Chief? The man glared at him. You think you know her? Ask about her mother, a fraudster who nearly ruined my company. I covered it up to protect my name. That's the kind of blood you're harboring. Amora's voice broke. That's a lie. Chief Anayo turned away coldly. Stay here and keep cleaning floors if you wish. You are no daughter of mine. He climbed into his car and sped off, leaving silence and dust behind. Amora fell to her knees, sobbing. David knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Hey, don't listen to him. She shook her head violently. His telling half-truths. I don't even know what really happened back then. David looked into her tearful eyes. Then we'll find out together. The next day, David called his late father's lawyer, Barrister Uduek, an elderly man who had served the Okon family for 3 decades. They met in the dimly lit study, files spread across the desk. Sir, David said, my father once mentioned a scandal involving Chief Anayo's company 20 years ago. I need the truth. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, scanning the old records. I remember. The company was nearly bankrupt, and someone inside embezzled funds. Chief Anayo blamed your mother's friend, Mrs. Neka Oniima. Amora gasped. That's my mother. The lawyer nodded slowly. But your father suspected otherwise. He found proof that the fraud was orchestrated by Chief Anayo himself. Your mother was just a scapegoat. She took the fall to protect her daughter and died in shame. David's eyes widened. Is there evidence? The lawyer slid a faded folder across the desk. Signed letters, bank transfers, and one testimony from Madame Teresa confirming it. Amora's hands shook as she flipped through the papers. Tears streamed down her face. My mother was innocent. All these years, she was innocent. David clenched his jaw. Then the world will know. By evening, he called a press conference at the Ocon Foundation office. Cameras flashed as reporters filled the hall. David stood at the podium beside Amora, holding up the old documents. My father believed in truth. He began, and I will continue that legacy. Today, I reveal evidence clearing Mrs. Neka Onim of all false accusations. She died a good woman, and her name will be restored. The crowd erupted. Headlines exploded within hours. Billionaire exposes tycoon's decades-old cover-up. Chief Anayo's empire trembled. Amora's face appeared on every screen, no longer a maid, but a woman of dignity restored. Later that night, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the Abuja skyline, Amora whispered, "Thank you, David. My mother can rest now." He looked at her quietly. "And now it's your turn to live." The fallout was instant. Chief Anayo's investors withdrew. His name, once revered, became a synonym for deceit. But Amora didn't rejoice. She visited his home quietly a week later, holding a small Bible. He looked frail, surrounded by silence. "You came to gloat?" he asked bitterly. Amora shook her head. "No, I came to forgive." The old man's lips trembled. "After what I did to you." "You're still my father," she said softly. "You can keep your pride. I just wanted peace." Tears filled his eyes, the first he'd shed in years. "I failed you and your mother. I let greed destroy everything." She placed her hand gently on his arm. "Then start again. You're still breathing." Outside, David waited by the car. When she returned, he noticed her calm. "You forgave him, didn't you?" She smiled faintly. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it frees the soul. Days later, David received a call. Chief Anayo had donated his mansion to the Women Rebuilding Hope Foundation, naming it after Amora's mother. The Neka House. Amora wept when she heard the news. Redemption had come full circle. At the dedication ceremony, reporters surrounded her, asking how she felt. She replied humbly, "We all fall, but when God writes your story, even the ashes turn into light." Her grace stunned the nation. David watched her from afar, pride glowing in his chest. He realized he was no longer just grateful she existed. He was in love with her. One evening, as the sun melted behind Aso Rock, David invited Amora to the garden. The breeze carried the scent of hibiscus flowers. "Do you remember the day you told me about your catering dreams?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Of course, back when I couldn't even afford salt." David reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside were registration papers and a company certificate. Amora's table, she read aloud, eyes wide. "It's yours," David said. "A partnership between you and the Ocon Foundation. You'll cater our corporate events, weddings, everything." She was speechless. "David, I can't take this." "Yes, you can, because you've earned it. You've earned everything." Tears rolled down her face. "You've changed my life." He smiled. "Maybe you changed mine first." Within months, Amora's table launched from the mansion's guesthouse kitchen. Her food captivated Abuja. Governors ordered deliveries, influencers praised her recipes, and TV shows invited her for interviews. But what moved her most were the women she trained, single mothers, widows, and young girls. "If I could rise," she told them, "so can you." David often visited the busy kitchen, watching her manage with poise and laughter. Every glance they exchanged carried silent affection, though neither had confessed it aloud yet. But fate was not done testing them. One cloudy morning, she received a call that would change everything. The morning was alive with excitement. Amora's table had been chosen to cater a high-profile government event at the presidential villa, their biggest contract yet. Staff buzzed around loading trays of jollof rice, pepper soup, and grilled fish into the catering truck. David insisted on escorting them. "You're not driving without security," he said firmly. As the convoy moved through the city, Amora's heart swelled with pride. From dumpster scraps to presidential catering, God had done it all. They were halfway through Gaki when the chaos began. A speeding convoy, flashing sirens, reckless drivers, swerved into their lane. The lead SUV rammed their truck side, sending it spinning. Screams filled the air. The world blurred, metal against metal, shattered glass, smoke. When the truck stopped, David's body shielded hers. Blood trickled from his forehead. Amora screamed his name, shaking him. "David, please, stay with me." He opened his eyes weakly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she cried. "But you—" Before he could reply, he passed out. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically. Hours later, one emerged with grim news. He's alive, but there's spinal damage. He may never walk again. Amora's world collapsed. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. For weeks, she refused to leave his side. She fed him, prayed for him, sang softly to him in the quiet hours. Even when he lashed out in frustration, "I'm useless now, Amora. Leave me alone." She stayed. One night, she held his hand and whispered, "You once saved me when I was nothing. Let me save you now." Her faith was fierce, her love silent but unbreakable. In the quiet glow of that hospital room, their roles had reversed. The savior had become the saved. And though neither knew it yet, love was about to rise from the ruins. Rain lashed the windows of Nizami Hospital that night. The rhythmic tapping echoed through the sterile halls like a heartbeat. Inside room 212, the once powerful David Ocon lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. Machines hummed softly beside his bed. Amora sat at his bedside, her wrapper loose around his shoulders, eyes red from sleepless nights. She had refused to go home for 3 weeks. Even the doctors had begun calling her the quiet angel. "Miss Amora," Nurse Kaoma whispered, "you need rest." Amora shook her head. "He didn't rest when I was suffering. I won't leave him now." David turned weakly, his voice rough. "Why are you still here?" She looked at him gently. "Because you didn't leave me when the world mocked me." He clenched his fists. "You don't understand. I can't move my legs. Amora, I'm half a man now." Her voice trembled but firmed. "No, you're not half. You're whole. You just can't see it yet." He closed his eyes, frustrated. "You should focus on your business, on your son. Forget me." She reached for his hand and placed it over her heart. "I can't forget the man who showed me that kindness still exists." Days turned to weeks. Amora became his physical therapist, motivator, and constant companion. She read the Psalms aloud, whispered affirmations, and forced him to attempt every small movement. "Again," she would say, voice calm but fierce. "Lift it again." He groaned in pain. "I can't." "Yes, you can." And slowly, miracle by miracle, he began to move his toes, then his ankles. Then, one evening, to everyone's shock, he stood. His legs trembled violently, but he stood. Amora clapped through tears. "You see? Faith works when love refuses to give up." In that moment, David realized something. She hadn't just healed his body. She had resurrected his soul. Months later, David returned home walking with a cane. The mansion, once filled with echoes of loneliness, now buzzed with new life. The first thing he did was summon his board and make a bold announcement. Half of the mansion will become a training center for women. The rest will serve as headquarters for the Women Rebuilding Hope Foundation. The board gasped. "Sir, that's unconventional." David smiled. "So is feeding a stranger behind a restaurant." Renovations began immediately. The East Wing transformed into classrooms and dormitories. The once private swimming pool became a communal courtyard for workshops. Every week, dozens of single mothers, widows, and young women arrived, learning catering, fashion, and financial literacy. Amora oversaw it all. She walked through the halls with pride, greeting each woman by name. "Hey, we rebuild lives," she often said. The mansion that once symbolized elite isolation became a sanctuary of hope. Abuja's media called it the House of Second Chances. One Saturday evening, as the golden sunset bathed the walls, Amora stood quietly on the balcony. David joined her. "You turned my father's empire into something he never imagined," he said softly. She smiled. "No, we did. You gave me a roof. I gave it purpose." He looked at her, admiration glowing in his eyes. You've changed this house, and me." Before he could say more, little Chidi ran out shouting, "Uncle David, come and see. They made cake for you." Laughter filled the air. For the first time, David realized this. This warmth, this laughter, was what home was meant to feel like. The evening was electric. The ballroom of the Hilton Hotel, Abuja, glowed with chandeliers and camera flashes. The Okon Foundation was hosting its annual charity gala, and for the first time, Amora was not serving food. She was being honored. She wore a simple flowing gold gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was elegantly braided, her smile radiant. Guests whispered as she walked in beside David, whose cane had become more of a symbol than a necessity. The event host took the stage. "Tonight, we celebrate the woman who turned tragedy into triumph, Mrs. Amora Oniima." Thunderous applause filled the hall. Amora's heart swelled. When David took the microphone, his voice was steady but emotional. "Some months ago, I met a woman outside a restaurant. She wasn't begging for money. She was begging for survival. I didn't know that giving her food would feed my soul." The hall fell silent. Cameras clicked. "She came into my mansion as a maid," he continued, "and turned it into a home. She taught me humility, purpose, and love." He turned toward her, eyes glistening. "Amora, you walked into my life with nothing, yet gave me everything. Will you marry me?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amora covered her mouth. Stunned, tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, yes, I will." The hall erupted. Guests cheered. Hashtags flooded social media. Hash from dumpster to queen, hash Abuja love story. As David slid a ring onto her finger, he whispered, "You were never a charity case. You were a miracle waiting to be seen." The crowd rose in ovation as the music swelled, and for the first time, Amora allowed herself to believe her suffering had been preparation for destiny. The wedding of David and Amora became the talk of the nation, not for its extravagance, but for its emotion. The ceremony was held at the newly rebuilt Okon Mansion, now part charity headquarters, part family home. The morning sun kissed the marble steps as guests arrived. Business magnates, celebrities, journalists, and dozens of the women whose lives Amora had touched. They wore bright Ankara fabrics, singing softly as they took their seats. Amora emerged in a simple ivory gown, holding Chidi's small hand. She paused at the gate, remembering the first day she'd stood there, jobless, homeless, hopeless. Now, the same gates opened wide, welcoming her as a bride. David waited at the altar under an arch of white roses. When he saw her, emotion overtook him. His voice cracked as he said his vows. "You walked into my mansion a stranger and became its light. I promise to protect your heart the way you protected mine when I couldn't walk." Amora smiled through tears. "You taught me that love isn't about riches or fame. It's about two broken souls rebuilding together." Applause filled the air. Even Chief Anayo attended, humbled, aged, dressed modestly. During the reception, he approached them quietly. "My daughter," he said, tears wetting his cheeks, "thank you for forgiving me. You gave me the chance to be human again." Amora embraced him. "You will always be my father." The evening ended with dancing beneath string lights. Guests sang praises while fireworks painted the sky over Abuja. That night, as they drove away, David whispered to her, "Do you realize we just lived a parable?" Amora laughed softly. "Maybe, but it's not over yet. The world still needs feeding." A year later, the gates of the Okon Mansion opened every Sunday morning for a new tradition, the Table of Grace. Rows of chairs filled the compound. Long tables were covered in steaming pots of rice, beans, stews, and fresh bread. Hundreds of people, the homeless, street kids, and struggling mothers, lined up for free meals. Amora stood at the center, apron tied over her white dress, serving plates with a bright smile. Beside her, David, now fully recovered, ladled soup, laughing with volunteers. "You sure this is enough rice?" he teased. She nudged him playfully. "For the poor, there's always enough. We serve until the last plate is gone." Cameras occasionally came to film the initiative, but they always blurred faces and focused on the laughter, the prayers, the joy. No glamour, no filters, just humanity. One day, A little girl tugged at Amora's gown. "Auntie, are you the madam that used to beg by views?" Amora knelt to her level, smiling warmly. "I was. But look what God can do when you don't give up." The girl grinned and hugged her tightly. That evening, after everyone had eaten, Amora and David sat under the same balcony where she'd once cried over gossip and shame. Now the air was full of singing. The women from her foundation were rehearsing hymns for an upcoming charity concert. David watched her quietly. "Sometimes I still can't believe this house used to be empty." She smiled. "It was never empty. It was waiting for purpose." He nodded, looking out at the courtyard, filled with light, laughter, and second chances. Amora leaned her head on his shoulder. "Funny how we started with leftovers." He chuckled softly, and ended with love. As the evening sun faded, the mansion lights came on, illuminating the banner above the gate. The Ocon Foundation, feeding bodies, healing souls. The camera zooms out, showing the city skyline glowing, the mansion standing like a beacon in the heart of Abuja. Fade out. Hash from dumpster to queen, hash the table of grace, hash Abuja love story, hash true grace.